When the U.S. government designates a company as a supply chain risk, it is deploying an economic death sentence. Historically, this label was reserved exclusively for foreign adversaries caught infiltrating American infrastructure, like the Chinese telecom giant Huawei or the Russian software firm Kaspersky Lab. The designation is a blunt instrument designed to purge hostile foreign intelligence operations from federal networks. But in February 2026, the Pentagon took this weapon meant for foreign spies and aimed it directly at a domestic company. They applied the label to Anthropic, one of America's leading artificial intelligence labs. Anthropic hadn't been hacked, and they weren't caught leaking state secrets. The blacklisting was triggered entirely by a contract dispute. The company explicitly refused to delete two specific usage restrictions from its corporate terms of service. Their policy stated that their AI model, Claude, could not be used to power fully autonomous weapons that engage targets without human oversight. It also firmly prohibited using the system for the mass domestic surveillance of American citizens. The Department of Defense delivered a blunt ultimatum: surrender operational control over these rules or face total exclusion from the defense ecosystem. Anthropic chose the latter, triggering a constitutional crisis that forced the public to choose sides in the tech industry's first major values war. The partnership actually began as a major success story. In July 2025, the Department of Defense awarded Anthropic a $200 million contract. Thanks to a partnership with Palantir, Claude became the first commercial AI model deployed directly onto the military's classified networks. The relationship fractured in January 2026. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a mandate requiring all military AI contracts to adopt standard any lawful use language. This directly clashed with Anthropic's specific safety carve-outs. The breaking point came during preparations for the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. An Anthropic executive reportedly reached out to Palantir to inquire if their technology was being used in the raid. That single question set off alarms inside the Department of Defense. Military leaders realized they were facing a scenario where an AI system powering an active operation might decide mid-mission that the tactical plan violated its corporate terms of service and shut itself down. On February 24th, Hegseth called Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei into the Pentagon. He was given 3 days to drop the restrictions. If he refused, the government threatened to invoke the Defense Production Act, a law that allows the president to compel private companies to prioritize national defense contracts. When Amodei publicly refused the demand, the government made good on its threats. A standard procurement disagreement escalated into an existential battle over whether an elected government or a private tech company dictates how military operations are conducted. Within hours of the Pentagon blacklisting Anthropic, OpenAI stepped into the void. CEO Sam Altman announced a new classified deployment deal, accepting the government's all lawful purposes language and giving the military the ability to override safety restrictions. OpenAI clearly expected a public relations win and a clear path to market dominance. Instead, they walked directly into a massive consumer revolt over the final weekend of February. This chart tracks daily app metrics over those crucial days. U.S. uninstalls of the ChatGPT mobile app surged 295%, while Claude's downloads spiked sharply, pushing it to the #1 spot on the App Store. Highlighting the specific demographics behind these uninstalls, a clear pattern emerges. The users abandoning OpenAI were highly influential developers, researchers, and paying subscribers. They migrated en masse to the grassroots Quit GPT movement, which quickly gathered over 2.5 million cancellation pledges. By walking away from a lucrative defense contract on ethical grounds, Anthropic completely flipped the conventional wisdom of the tech sector. They proved that strict safety commitments operate as a highly lucrative brand differentiator. Anthropic responded by taking the Department of Defense to federal court, citing First Amendment violations. Their lawsuit highlights a glaring procedural flaw. The government invoked Section 3252, a statutory authority specifically drafted to block foreign espionage, simply because they lost an argument over a domestic contract. The lawsuit also exposes a massive vulnerability in the military's technological strategy, known as vendor lock-in. By rushing to integrate artificial intelligence across its classified networks, the Pentagon built deep operational dependencies on private commercial companies. This dependency was so severe that even after officially declaring Anthropic a catastrophic supply chain risk, the military was forced to continue using Claude to support active combat operations in Iran. They simply didn't have a backup system ready to deploy. Anthropic's willingness to endure a government ban comes down to a concept called recursive self-improvement. This is the theoretical point where an AI system becomes capable of meaningfully accelerating its own development. Because the company believes they are approaching this threshold, they view maintaining strict control over their models as an existential necessity rather than a public relations strategy. But the government's frustration stems from a very real legal blind spot. When Anthropic bans mass surveillance, they are enforcing a rule that does not actually exist in American law. Statutes governing intelligence gathering have not been updated to account for the speed and scale of modern language models. Both sides are operating in a total regulatory vacuum. Congress has failed to pass comprehensive governance for algorithmic systems, leaving tech executives to draft terms of service that attempt to regulate national security risks that no current law even comprehends. Until elected officials build a concrete legal framework for algorithmic warfare, the United States faces a severe structural weakness. The ultimate authority over how the military deploys its most powerful new weapons will remain entirely dependent on the shifting terms of service of private corporations.